what to expect here. They've banned away the Monty.
Yeah. We were saying how we wanted those kind of more normal bans, and Monty isn't one who always gets his way in, but NIP certainly know how to work their way around a shield. And in response, NIP are going to be banning out Maverick. That is another one of those more standard bans. It does mean, however, that an operator, for example, Hibana, is going to be left in. That could make it easier to attack down onto the armory site in the basement. Kaid, the next one to be going out as far as defenders go.
We've got a nice little balance here, haven't we? We've had the Monty removed, obviously. NIP, it's almost their sort of parachute called that when things aren't going too well for them, they will bring a shield. Team Liquid, they aren't letting them have any shield whatsoever. Clash as well, going to go on the defense. It's something that we've seen NIP lean into so many times. Where things aren't going their way, they will bring that shield and they will allow Julio to play that shield operator and to really gather as much information as possible. So for me, no big real surprise there to see Team Liquid targeting that quite heavily. You mentioned that Hibana is going to be available, but with Kaid involved, it's going to force a Thatcher pick. Likely, as we can see, Julio has opted for Thatcher. And yes, that is Julio. I think he's just got a little excited with his name.
You, Julio! That's what we have to refer to him as now.
I think that's probably quite accurate, honestly.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I'm excited to see this. This is the first time that I've gone to cast Siege in a little while, so I'm really I'm buzzing. I'm like a child on Christmas. I'm looking at these new operator icons and I'm like, oh, look, it's shiny, it's new, it's crazy. And also, it almost feels like going back to the past in a way. You know, we're seeing a Bandit come out, we're seeing a Thatcher come out. These are operators that we don't, or at least over the course of the last few months to a year, don't get to see that much, so it feels like we're being treated.
It really does. We've got some of the good old fashions in there, haven't we? As you mentioned, the Thatcher, the Bandit. It's almost Siege as it was a couple of years ago before we saw some changes, and maybe we're going to see things sort of go back to previous state, the previous meta. It's a good point that you bring up about the new UI. There are a couple of changes, and we'll cover them as and when they do pop up on the screen. But the places to keep a keen eye on are going to be either side, the two sort of vertical columns there. They're going to be dishing out all of that player information. Some of that will change, and it will just give you a little bit more of an idea as to what players are doing. For example, Muzi at the moment, well, for the time being, he was just in his drone, and we could see that by the fact that the drone was highlighted.
Straight away going to be starting up on the top floor of CCTV and Cash. And we did see the Hibana pellets opening up onto the garage wall so that they could hold the angles up towards, rotate up towards the rafters, where you will undoubtedly find at least one defender trying to hold in there. PSK's out on a roam though, hoping to prevent any of the attackers coming in through stock, through that bottom floor. So far... Gonna say, so far he hasn't found anything. Muzi found him first. Opening kill goes towards NIP.
PSK getting taken out there. It is going to give an advantage to NIP, and we do see them work a little bit better on the attack when they do have that advantage. A bit of an unfortunate out of time in there, as Muzi's now been allowed to get underneath and start removing that floor on side of East Wall. It's going to mean that Bandit can't be in a position to trick, and in conjunction with a Thatcher EMP, it's going to do the entirety of the job. Psycho! He got so lucky there, and he turned around, and Palu, unfortunately for him, he's going to miss his shots, the UMP not being too kind.
The thing as well is they now know exactly where Palu is. He's basically broadcasted his location. He's going to receive some extra support from Nesk, who's down at the bottom of the red stairs. Psycho trying to hold on to these angles through the floor that have been opened up, but he'll receive some fire coming back in from the defenders. Still working to clear out rafters. They know one of the players is up there, but Sexy Cake is going to be the next casualty for Team Liquid.
Palu could be in a position to do some good work here, but he's going to have a lot of it to do as we see Moringa fall as well to Muzi. Julio now going to be keeping an eye on those blue stairs. Palu maybe has scanned the location with the heartbeat scanner and knows someone's going to be there, but you can just see how many options he now has to keep a track on. No C4, oh sorry, one C4 in hand, but it isn't even going to matter. This could be a flawless round here for NIP to kick things off. It all now lands in the hands of Nesk. Arguably, it would still be a flawless, even though Kamikaze has taken down Pino. Can Nesk get the job done? The answer is going to be no. NIP going to take round number 1 here.
Didn't even need to worry about getting the diffuser down either. They just played it all for blood. And I think one of the great things that NIP went for in that round was the fact that they put so much attention down onto the bottom floor. Not only was it the way that they tried to pressure Garage, rather than doing it by holding the server wall and holding the Garage door, you know, the small door through which you can walk and you don't have to open up. The classic door in front of the stairs. That's where you oftentimes see pressure going onto rafters. But this time, all of their attention was done through from the breachable garage doors. Made it harder for any of the defenders to get angles onto them. So they also had that pressure coming in through bar, coming in through lounge, and they could gradually clear out those players from Team Liquid who, whether they were on the roam like PSK or had come to support like Nest, they were giving themselves over one by one. And you weaken a defensive team that much, it's going to be so much easier to actually force your way onto the site, which is what we found happened at the end, especially after Moringa went down, and you don't need to worry about that player over on rafters who could give you a crossfire and catch you from behind.
Big opening round there for NIP. We asked them to sort of speed things up somewhat on the attack, and they did just exactly that. Not even suffering a single casualty to the hands of Team Liquid, although we did see a player die in the midst of battle. Sometimes these things do happen. Puts NIP in a great spot here. It's forced Liquid away to a different site. So they're going to now try and focus on this basement. Liquid have gone for the strategy of, well, we need to try and get out there on the roam, and we need to try and waste as much time as possible, because we know that NIP are a team that when they get caught up inside of that roam clear, it can quickly run away with them.
Liquid have also really lent in here to play around information, whether it's gathering or denying. They've got the Maestro, they've got a Legion, they've got a Mute, and they've got a Mozzie. And I suppose the Banshees on the side of Palu as the Malusi will also help with that as well. Oh, I'm pretty sure he just got spotted down through the floor, but I suppose some trigger discipline there is going to mean that no shots fired just yet. The point is, if Team Liquid can take away that information from NIP and have extra for themselves, maybe they can force a slow in their already slow playstyle. Ouch, Moringa. Ouch.
Ouch indeed, as Moringa is going to be down for the count. Muzi looking to pressure on in as well, just waiting for a drone. Nesk in a position to try and bait one here, and he will do just exactly that. Finds the refrag instantly, and looks to try and make his way at least back down to some sort of safety. Maybe join up with Sexy Cake at the top of main stairs. Palu going to be trying to lock out the bar for now, as him and Pino are pretty much locked onto one another, but Palu has other things to be worrying about.
Still this presence outside of the site that hasn't yet been recalled. At this point, you usually would expect to see defenders who are on a roam move down into the basement to join the remains of the players. Palu hasn't done that. He's still in bar, and that's a beautiful shot from Julio coming through to remove him. That means just 3 players remaining on Liquid and no opportunity for Palu to join his comrades downstairs.
Sexy Cake inside of Dirt Tunnel is going to be able to get in and assist PSK here. We got Nesk at the top of main stairs. Again, not a bad position to really be in, but it is going to rely on them getting a couple of kills each here to try and get this job done. Now the time is going to be seriously ticking down as we see 30 seconds approaching on the clock. Now Nesk has an opportunity here to find himself one, and he will do so. Other players have committed to the Moto drop. Kamikaze going to be the next player to fall as Pino pushes his way on into Church, but is cut down by Sexy Cake as he picks himself up a nice little double. Pressure from Blue was a little bit too little too late. Sexy Cake confirming the triple kill that round. Liquid, they respond.
I think NIP rested on their laurels a bit too much towards the end there. They got too comfortable with the fact that they'd successfully cleared out the middle floor. They were trying to take space in bar. They wanted to make that Moto hatch drop. Did not expect Nesk to be there on the main stairs. That allowed him to get the 1 kill. And while he didn't get a second, he didn't really need to. that information could be passed on to the rest of his team. They knew what NIP were going for at that point. There wasn't much time remaining. It's not like they could suddenly change their route into the site, and Sexy Cake was ready to deal with any of those attacking players who were to drop down onto the basement. So it was a really nice instance of Team Liquid working together and exploiting the comfort that NIP thought they had found themselves in towards the end. Well, now they're going to come up to their third site in the rotation, and one of the things we discussed at the start, Ollie, was, are we going to see the Flores come out? Well, the answer in this case is yes. Psycho playing that Flores right now.
Gym and bedroom going to be the site choice. Unsure if NIP knew that to be the case or not. With CCTV and cache still being open, there was an opportunity for Liquid to go back there as they did in round number 1. But alas, at least we get to see some Flores action here. We're going to want to try and keep a keen eye on Psycho and where he chooses to deploy those explosive drones.
I mean, for me, I would assume that, I mean, there's so many different ways you could use it, but on a site like this where you want to be looking at breaching both Jacuzzi and the east wall, maybe they are looking to remove some denial. Maybe they're looking to push the player out of bathroom. We know how much bathroom is a pivotal area to hold as a defender on this map. Oh, nice shot. If you can remove the player out of bathroom, that gives you so much potential control as an attacker.
Quite possibly, we're going to get to see, you know, initially just use one to try and open the wall open a little bit further. Of course, once they are attached onto the surface and primed, ready for exploding, it doesn't really matter what it is. As long as it's destructible, it is going to destroy to some degree. So even there just being used as a little bit of pseudo hard breach. Still got 2 remaining, so chance to see a player be rooted out of a power position. Typically, you're going to be looking at pressure and shields, and there are a couple of shields in play here by Liquid. We might see Psycho just try and get himself into a position to remove those, and all of a sudden, Liquid won't really have anywhere to hide.
It's like they're going for a full clear over from the east side. And seeing how some of these frost mats have been placed behind the Aruni gates, as you can see right by Nesk here, I would love, the sadist in me really wants to see someone die to one or DBNO'd by one, because it's always hilarious to see that in pro play. But it looks like NIP are trying to do their due diligence about finding the information, getting rid of that utility such as the shield, which forces Nesk out of his position. They're using their time well.
They really are, and once those shields are gone and you've got somebody like Pino in position to try and gain those crossfires and those rotation kills, as we see him outside on the balcony at the moment, always the opportunity and always the chance. I imagine he just wasn't in position when we saw that initial rotation from Palu, but certainly in position now. Again, time going to be running a little bit short here for NIP, considering the amount of players that are still alive. Sexy Cake is going to be dead, but you can see that he is going to be on a default camera there. So I imagine his yokais either have been taken out or aren't in useful locations. Final info being gathered here by the attacker. Psycho, there you go, Gio. You get your wish. Psycho gets caught inside of the Pogmat. He is going to be down, leveling things up here, all importantly for Liquid. Nesk, he's got loads of angles to check, and he doesn't really know where the push is going to materialize from. Muzi, he'll announce himself inside of construction, finding an easy frag there over onto Nest. We've got some more Frostmat action as Moody was down for a brief second.
Ooh.
1 versus 2 now. Effectively 1 versus 1, but Julio goes huge. Finds all 3 of those final kills. He had no business doing that, Gio.
Oh my god, it looked like it was going to be a very similar thing to the previous round where NIP got a certain way through the round, felt too comfortable and got punished for it. And I have to say, it was funny that it was Psycho who got downed by the Pogmat, given that he was the one doing all this droning, collecting so much information for the team, clearing all the utility, and yet he still fell victim to it. But you get aggressive at the end. Julio is there. You know, we said Team Liquid banning out the Monty specifically to target him. I guess you don't, that's not going to stop him, apparently. NIP taking the lead here, and it certainly shows an improvement in the way that their attacks have been going. You know, we spoke about how NIP were notoriously slow on attack back in stage 1. Sometimes they would run out of time. You very rarely see them get to the point where they have a comfortable enough amount of time to place the diffuser down. And admittedly, in this game so far, they still don't seem to be playing for the objective, but they're using their time a lot better. And if they can get more consistent at not getting too comfortable at the end, being prepared for those fights that Julio won out in the last round, then yeah, they can absolutely run away with more attacking rounds. I think that's entirely viable.
3 kills from Julio in that fashion is not repeatable. The impressive thing there is the information exchange on the hands of NIP. Every single one of those players that Julio was able to kill had already impacted and had already got a kill or been involved in some way in one of the deaths of the players on the side of NIP. So for me, the information exchange and the fact that he's just able to go through those motions, pre-firing the spots, and he's just trusting there in that information. But again, with so little time remaining, and especially when frost mats are a thing, and we saw just how NIP struggled for time. They got caught in a couple of frost mats there. I think 2 actually went off. There was one that went off in and amongst the utter chaos that the last sort of 20 seconds of that round were. And you could just see how much that was impacting them. Now, previously when we saw them attack upstairs into CCTV and Cash, NIP were very successful. It was almost a flawless round.
Well, Team Liquid have also changed the operators that they've decided to bring here. No more is Ness going to be on Bandit. Instead, going to be playing on Goyo instead. Now, the interesting thing here is NIP was so successful about being able to clear out that middle floor. That's where a lot of the players of Team Liquid were. And in order to successfully play a Goyo, you would typically expect him to be based down in the lounge area because of the C4s that you can fire upwards, because of the control that you can have onto the site from below. But if he gets cleared out again by NIP in the same manner that they did previously, I don't know if it's going to be that big a difference.
Pino knows there's going to be a player up on the rafters. He's got a red ping. He's just waiting for his time to strike. Moringa has got some magnets. It's going to take a little bit of utility burn to come on through, but Pino isn't immediately going to push in off the back of it. Instead, taking his time and being extremely cautious before netting himself that frag. So much information here available on the side of NIP, and he's going to continue. Finds himself a second onto Sexy Cake.
Yeah, I mean, NIP are just looking so good here on this site, seemingly attacking it with expertise. Nesk feeling a lot more pressure as he's got a whole top red, knowing there are players both outside the server wall and over in garage. It's a very difficult couple of lines of sight to hold all by yourself. And NIP can now open up that reinforced garage wall a bit further and should give themselves the opportunity to just flood into the site.
Can really start to push the bounds here and put the pressure onto Team Liquid. Ness going to kick things off with a great kill over onto Pino. He's getting caught inside of his own Vulcan shield there, but it isn't going to deter him from picking up some kills. Ness, a player that we've seen regularly fragging out, eventually shut down by Julio, who's arguably outshining everybody on the server at the moment. Palu steps up to the plate as well. PSK from inside of construction. Can he find the final one? No, the flood in from Muzi was huge. Had to make his way all the way through CCTV into Cash, goes for the swing. Hits his shots in the end. NIP remaining unbeaten upstairs.
Maybe it was a little messy, but it was still that flood in from the site that I mentioned that NIP were able to set up for themselves. Both times that Team Liquid have gone to the CCTV and Cash site now, it has been a problem of holding on to rafters. I think that has been a really key issue for them. And that's been something that if they were to choose to go again, which to be honest, at this point, I doubt they will. I think they'll complete the cycle. They'll probably go to church and gym again. So no more defending CCTV. But if they were, I think that's where a lot of the improvement needs to be made. And we did see changes made. You know, Moringa came on to the 1-mai. He was placing a lot of the discs to prevent projectiles. But in that case, it wasn't really the projectiles that were a huge problem for him. It was the fact that NIP were being so meticulous with their droning. Moringa had to be forced out of position to get rid of a couple of the drones that were coming in. That takes a lot of his attention. And then the way that they were droning up the stairs as well, just peeking round the little railing on the garage. So Moringa couldn't do anything about the fact he was being watched. And Pino got the perfect kill from the garage door right onto him. So there wasn't a ton of protection on the garage. Now, what maybe they could have done, I don't know how the denial was done. I don't know how the denial was done on the garage. Maybe the mute jammers were placed there. But ideally, they would have a lot of denial on those garage walls so that you can't really have a pressure from beneath. You're forced as an attacker then to try and take the challenge from just the open garage door. And maybe if you have a second defender who can help try and take that fight, remove that threat, makes it so much harder for the attackers to push into garage. That's something that I wonder would maybe be a way to look forward for Liquid. But as I say, I'm not entirely convinced that they're going to return back to that site on this half.
Yeah, I think it's probably quite wise to avoid that top floor from now on, because NIP have just got such a good handle of how they want to try and approach that. And as you said, it was all about the information, wasn't it? Every time we were in a point of view or a player point of view from the side of NIP, there were so many pings, whether they be yellow pings, whether they be hard red pings, whatever it was, there was that information there. And there was so much of that being exchanged between the team. We've seen it demonstrated back in round number 3. We saw it again there inside of round number 4. And it's something that they're consistently working off the back of. And honestly, Liquid, whilst they can win a couple of gunfights, they're not looking as deadly as they have done previously, where a lot of the gunfights are going to go in their favor. A lot of these have been positions where NIP have been taking that fight from a position of strength and really focusing on funneling and almost herding Team Liquid like you would sort of herd sheep or something like that to keep them all in a nice little zone. That's how I feel like Team Liquid are being treated at the moment, is they're just being forced and pushed and constantly pinched and pressured, and they just can never find that solid footing to start to reply and to get a little bit of a comeback from.
Yeah, Team Liquid feel a bit splintered. And for example, one of the really big points that we made back in stage 1, and this continued on through SI as well, was that Nesk, who is one of the scariest, deadliest players you could possibly dread to go up against, one of the things that makes him so good is he's always in the perfect position to trade. But the problem is if these players of Liquid are off doing their own thing and they're being picked up off one by one, it's very hard to be in that position in the first place, to be able to capitalize on that and get a trade in there. So I think Nesk isn't finding as much value as we've seen him do so before, purely because of the way that, as you mentioned, NIP are kind of herding them in. Now, we are just waiting for Psycho to get back into the game. It's a technical pause. His PC crashed. What are you going to do? So we're waiting for that if you're wondering why we're back to our faces. But so far, if you are new to the broadcast, you've just tuned in, it's a 3-1 scoreline to the world champions.
That is going to be on Clubhouse on the attack, no less. An important sort of asterisk to add on to that current scoreline. I think if this was the defense, we wouldn't be too surprised about what we're seeing at the moment. But NIP have just got a much more different understanding of how they want to try and play here and now on Clubhouse against Team Liquid. And that's one of the things that I'm really enjoying at the moment, is we're seeing this map that we've all seen played so many times before, and already NIP are sort of flipping the expectation of that, and they're going, you know what, it isn't as defender sided as you think. Like, we're going to come out of here and we're going to take a good couple of rounds. Sure, there's still the option for Liquid to level it up into an exit at a 3-3 split, but equally there is the option here for NIP to get potential 5-1 or a 4-2, and that would really put them in a nice situation, especially if we consider the bans that we had moving into this, where you could see that Liquid were trying to target NIP to a degree. You know, they removed Monty, they removed the Clash, both operators that we know NIP to really sort of lean into when things aren't going too well for them. And the funny thing is, at the minute, that would not be in their minds at all. Nobody on the side of NIP is sat there going, oh, you know what we really need for that round? We really need a Monty.
Yeah.
Like, that just isn't a thing. Like, they've got so much information from drones and Flores or whatever else it is that they're like, you know what? You can keep your Monty ban. Just take it.
They're staying very well coordinated. They're not very far apart from each other. They're always in a great position to provide that sort of monolithic power against Team Liquid. So the kind of thing that you would look for from a Monty or any kind of shield operator is that ability to just brute force your way forward. But NIP don't need that, because the way that they're playing and the force with which they're approaching their goal kind of makes up for that, and they can use their guns at the same time. So it's kind of even better than having access to a Monty. I really think that it's just something has opened up in them that means that the speed of their play is just very different to what it was last stage, to be honest. I suspect that part of it is, part of it's going to be meta related, absolutely. Part of it is also going to be that because SI isn't on the horizon, they're not trying to, you know, potentially hide things. They're a little bit more maybe cognizant of where their place is in the standing, whereas before they knew they were qualified for SI. They didn't want to give too much away. That was some of the suspicion that was floating around anyway. But they seem really clean. And assuming, if we're following the pattern of the sites that we've seen, you would assume that Team Liquid are going to go down into the basement for this next site. Now, that's the only site that NIP have not successfully attacked onto before, and that's mostly because they got kind of too complacent towards the end. They were satisfied that they'd cleared out the ground floor and didn't think about the fact that there was someone watching them from main stairs. They didn't think about the fact that Team Liquid were gonna be prepared for their moto drop that they went for at the very end. I'm wondering how much NIP will be thinking about that going forward into this next round, assuming it is going to be the same site, and prepare for those potential exploits and plug those holes.
Well, we'll have to see how they try and approach it. We have a Psycho back in, and we're just remaking the lobby and getting everything all set up, ready to go. So thank you for bearing with us during this short break, but we have got a little bit to discuss. It helps that both of these teams recently faced off against one another, and that result is to some degree carrying through into the siege that we're seeing played here today by NIP, as they do currently lead. Do have everyone back into the lobby though, and we're going to get everything underway. Just going to perform some final checks before throwing it on in. Make sure that everything is working just fine. NIP and Team Liquid currently our first map of the day, and currently it is going to be 3-1 toward NIP, and we're going to jump back in very shortly.
Well, look at this. They are going down to the basement, so the pattern does indeed continue, Ollie. I wonder if the pattern will continue for NIP's track record of attacks on this map so far. Unless I'm mistaken, I think this is the same lineup that they brought. I'll be honest, I don't write down the operator lineups because it takes so freaking long. Although, have you seen some six-pick? Okay, this Ying's new. You know what this says to me? This says to me, kitchen hatch. Oh, okay, well, it's Buck now. That also could say kitchen hatch, though. You know, a Buck and a Sledge working together to open up the kitchen floor and the hallway outside of it. Yeah, I'll still go with the kitchen hatch theory. Why not?
Quite possibly. We've got to remember how this last round went as well when we saw it, and it was a round that NIP, they ran out of time, but there were players that were allowed to survive for a great deal of time inside of the site, and I'm looking mainly toward PSK, but also towards Sexy Cake. Sexy Cake was able to keep himself alive out there on the roam, get himself back to site and be a really big impact. If there is the potential to do something more than just drop that Moto hatch, then that's something that NIP have to look at, because that Moto hatch drop, it really didn't work out for them inside of the previous round when we saw the site. We'll have to see how Liquid are going to try and approach this one, but we've got a couple more changes. We've got a mirror window being brought as well. Some significant investment going in upstairs, as we've already seen some mute jammers placed on down. Paolo going to be looking to try and play inside a bar, and I believe the hatch is going to be open for him.
Mirror window, an interesting one. The one that we just saw Nesk place is going to allow him to look on out towards the bottom of the main stairs. So if they do decide that they want to get the church wall open, that will be a great source of denial for Team Liquid. But already the kitchen hatch is being open. You can hear those pellets being used, and that's, I mean, straight up, it's just open now.
That's kind of the curious thing about No-Cade and all those sort of things that move on into it. Sure, Hibana has the ability to determine how many X-Karos pellets are fired out at any one time, but to have nothing challenging onto that hatch is a little bit unusual. It's not something you can always afford to just give away entirely for free, and it really could come down now to hurt Liquid, as with that, NIP are going to gain a big advantage, especially if they can get themselves in toward that kitchen area and start to open up some of the floor. But for the time being, their concern is going to be on clearing out this roam game.
It's one of those things too that there's just no point in trying to impact it if they're bringing a Hibana, because you can't bring enough impacts to deal with the threat. Psycho, looking around, I'm wondering who is droning him, because he's being very cautious, so it suggests that maybe he's face checking, but I can't see any drones up ahead of him, holding on to these angles now. But it's actually over in logistics where Moringa is placed. He's waiting for a drop. Oh, he's gonna get caught from behind! The patience pays off for Psycho. That's gonna be passed along to the rest of the team.
Moringa again getting caught out there as Psycho can now look to make his way down those main stairs. We do have Palu underneath kitchen hatch, C4 in hand. Ready and waiting to try and get something done, but he has been droned. Still got to be cautious of the angles that can be gained here, and it looks to me as though that's going to swing and miss, and the explosion will confirm that. I'm running short here for NIP as we are entering this 30 seconds, and there's still 9 players live on the server, so trying to figure out where the drop and where the push is going to be. The mirror window on that church wall could be a little bit tricky as well, but it isn't going to matter as kills continue to flood on in almost a flawless, but Palu has something to say about it. Finds a massive 2 kills. Kamikaze now going to try and confirm that plant. Palu is left to try and find where the planter is. Post plant situation now, it will be an ace clutch for him if he pulls this one off. How much intel has he got? The answer, not enough. That mirror window being opened allowed Pino the perfect line of sight over into blue to be able to take Palu down.
So not only did NIP improve by successfully winning the round, but they also got the diffuser down for the first time in this whole game as well. I would say that that's a pretty good success there. And it was... There were a couple of things that that kind of irked me. I mean, the fact that, was it Nesk who was waiting behind the mirror window that was looking into blue? Because that was an unnecessary peek. And I think that really, really hurt Team Liquid, because after that, this flood of kills come through. You no longer have someone directly watching over blue. You know that whoever is left in Armory has to basically check both angles, i.e. the kitchen hatch in case someone drops, also over into blue in case someone comes down that way, and it was weakened over towards church as well. I mean, we saw 2 of the NIP players over there. I think it was Pino who got that final kill onto Palu. So you just don't peek when you don't need to. You've got a mirror window that you can look through, and I don't think, from what we could see, it looked like he directly knew who was there. It just looked like it was just one step over the line that begun the downfall there for Team Liquid. And just, while it wasn't necessarily Moringa's fault for deciding the logistics was clear, they had no intel on the rest of the floor. They know that NIP have been investing a lot into roam clear. Even if they didn't directly have a camera somewhere in there to tell them where people were, which of course is kind of unlikely that they would have, it was maybe naive to just assume. So being caught out like that, again, it just comes back to you're skipping out steps that would have been necessary because NIP have been exploiting them.
I think one of the things I really picked up on there, Gio, was when you said the word camp, was just like Valkyrie's a thing. You know, sometimes you can get yourself into like the 6th round, 7th round of the game, and you're like, actually, that operator exists. Like, why haven't we seen a Valkyrie? And then you look over and you're like, right, who are Liquid bringing? And you're like, bringing a Legion. Why isn't us playing a Legion when Valkyrie's available? If he wants impacts, Valkyrie has impacts. It looks to me as though Liquid are lacking that information. And that's demonstrated with the way that they're regularly losing these opening engagements. They're regularly getting themselves caught out. Sexy K finding himself in one of those difficult spots. Somehow managing able to get himself out with his life, but the drone work is going to continue here. NIP. Well, Psycho, he might be down and low, but he certainly isn't out yet.
I mean, he's taken over bathroom. Decent place to be. The site's down in the basement, so Liquid have decided that they want to have another good go at this one, and yeah, I mean, they've lost a player. They might be about to lose a second one, though, as Moringa gets hunted down. He's going to try and peek out through the door frame. Doesn't quite land the kill onto Muzi. It's still a 1 versus 1 up here, and he can't escape out of this with his life unless he kills his adversary.
It's probably the second goo mine that has gone off, and potentially the second and last with how quickly Ness got himself taken on out. Sexy Cake has come up to try and aid Moringa, but he's taking a chunk of damage as well as Muzi. He confirms the kill that he half got earlier on. Moringa will fall. So Cake now going to be inside a stock. Palu laying on these blue stairs, maybe thinking about getting himself up and on into the action. Could have done a good job at wasting the time here, but you just feel like they've been chipped down a little bit too much.
I mean, this may sound a bit silly just because it doesn't necessarily lean into Liquid's way of playing. Oh, okay, Sexy K gets a kill. That's nice that he can return that. But maybe, you know, would Team Liquid be finding different results if they went for some kind of turtle strategy? There's only 2 of them left now after Julio gets that last kill. Sexy Cake is really risking things given that there's 2 players of NIP present in the bar. And now PSK's gone down. It's all on Sexy Cake to win this round out.
Well, he's found the first one and he's put some good damage into Kamikaze, but he is going to be at a significant disadvantage here. And again, we're going to see that plant go down. Sexy Cake, he has the long angle to peek onto. So does Muzi. He gets the heads up and he finds the frag. Very narrowly, is worth mentioning. NIP, what an attacking phase here on Clubhouse.
Yeah, that was nuts. That was absolutely insane. Not the NIP that we saw last stage. I want to say not even the NIP that we saw in the SI Grand Finals. Not because they look infinitely better here, but because Liquid gave them a much harder time in the Grand Finals. And right now, if you were to show this scoreline so far to someone who was not familiar with elite level Rainbow Six Siege, which, what are they doing? And you said, which one of these 2 teams do you think is the world champion? I think they would be able to pick them out pretty easily. Like 9.9999 times out of 10, someone's going to get that correct.
Yeah, there's not a lot that's being hidden away here, shall we say. A scoreline of 5-1. There's an attacking side split on Clubhouse is impressive whichever way you cut it. And IP coming out and doing it just exactly that. Now, compositions. We did see for a time a Valkyrie teased. Cycle has since switched on to Mirror. Mirror's seen quite a bit of play here inside of this game so far. Bandit as well going to be being brought. But in terms of Liquid's lineup, nothing really out of the ordinary. You've got 1 set of Hard Breach in Hibana. There's an argument to say that they could do with bringing 2. But let's see how they are able to try and take this. They're going to be coming from the back foot here, and that's not really a point that we can understate. We've got a long way to go here to try and level things up.
I love that you say there's an argument to be brought for bringing 2 hard breaches, as if it's just one of those things that you could do if you feel it, and not something that's considered basically required on Clubhouse.
I didn't want to say it's a must-do, you know.
It basically is,
though. It basically is, but they know what they're doing, Gio. They've got to have a reason for it, please.
Oh, yeah, you got to trust the process.
Exactly.
You know, especially as mere mortals like us, we have to believe that Team Liquid they've thought this through, they know what they're doing, and I would love to see what it is that they're planning on going for, and choosing to bring something like a Yana instead of a second Heart Breach. She's got the Gon 6, she can provide the extra information with the Geminis. Maybe that is going to be of more value to them, particularly as Hibana has so many options for how she can use her pellets. They're basically guaranteed to get all of the hatches open if they need to with just her. But that will make it harder if they want to then open up a wall, for example. And given especially the fact that Julio has brought along Bandit, I'm assuming the church wall has been electrified, so that's probably going to have to be left closed.
Well, we can see PSK is going to be opening up that kitchen hatch, and we mentioned he's unlikely to come up against all too much obstacle in doing so. Good tick in a box, but at this point it really is only that. Psycho, he's quite a few shots there into the corridor. And they really have opened that up and made things a little bit more tricky. Both sides, as you don't really want to be inside of Arsenal if the corridor is exposed like that, and likewise you don't really want to be inside of the corridor. But Buck from above is going to be able to provide a lot of lines of sight and a lot of holes to work from as well, and it's pretty much going to render Arsenal kind of useless. Now, that being said, with the holes that have been made into the corridor, it also isn't a prime place for these attackers to drop into, just because of how exposed they're going to be.
The smoke coming out in the dirt tunnel. Of course, it might not hurt quite as much as it used to. We've seen those smoke propagation changes be pretty influential, actually, in top-level siege that has been played of late, but it's still going to fill up that corridor, and that means the defenders are ready. Moringa trying to catch out the Jaeger as he runs over, but it's going to be Julio to get Moringa instead. And that's Palu's cue to move on forward, but Kamikaze's ready with the shotgun, and he gets it. Traded back, though. Team Liquid have just 2 players left. It's only Pino on the side of NIP. It's getting pretty brutal here, Ollie.
PSK going to try and get that diffuser down, but with time hitting all the zeros, really is only a matter of time. Pino, he knows he's got to push his way on through the default spots to check, and maybe a bit of intel to be working from. All enough to give him that final frag, and all importantly, it is going to put NIP onto that map point.
Ponto Decisivo. Decisivo. Yeah. This is not the game that Team Liquid were looking for. Absolutely not. And the fact that you could kind of tell some of their thought process in that last game. We did postulate about why they brought just 1 hard breach. You could tell that they were very cognizant of the fact that they only had that Hibana. Even just the way that they went to open the kitchen hatch, they did 2 pellets and then 2, rather than going straight in for 4. Because if for any reason they were going to lose pellets, they wanted to make sure it was the least number that they possibly could, right? Things like that. But it got so scrappy at the end. Moringa's death certainly didn't help, because you want someone always to be putting pressure onto blue. Well, if NIP is set up specifically to... I honestly don't know if the Jaeger running over was a bait or not, but it worked as one, because Moringa didn't know that Julio was through in church and would be able to shoot straight on him. You then don't have pressure onto blue. So where Team Liquid was setting themselves up for the remainder of the round, which is over in Dirt Tunnel, they couldn't afford to be careful and slow about it. They had to run in through the smoke, get caught out by the shotgun, get in these 1 versus 1s, trades going backwards and forwards, and you're running out of time, which is why you're left in a situation where even though you're going in for the plant, you can't finish it because you don't have the option to get off of it.
Let's see if that match point against Team Liquid is enough to fire them up here, because we really haven't seen what we know this team to be capable of. Sure, we have had a rehost, so kills aren't exactly representative of the entire game, but it does paint a little bit of a picture. And that is that Liquid have been severely lacking in that kill department. They haven't been able to win those gunfights as efficiently and as effectively as we've seen them do previously. And they've kind of made some weird decisions on the defense. Now we're on to the attack. Things, of course, we've got to look at them through a slightly new lens. But ultimately, we've got to go for some pretty flawless siege here on the attack to try and make something happen. They're going to be attacking over in toward gym and bedroom. There is the option for them to be able to get something going here. They have decided to bring 2 hard breaches. Kind of weird to see Palu on one of those hard breaches, Gio.
Weird to see an ace. Ever since he lost his smokes, right? It just feels kind of strange. He used to always be around. Well, they've got the jacuzzi wall partially open as the Selmas get deployed. And look at this. Pino is ready to mute trick. The one that you see every day. PSK with the opening kill as well. It is nice for Team Liquid if they want to keep themselves in the game, which I'm sure they do. It's also great that they got rid of the Vigil early. I was going to say that Team Liquid need to be hyper-vigilant of the fact there will likely be a roam that they'll have to deal with from NIP that could cause them problems if they ignore. Now, you can hear the EMP being sent out. Pino puts down the second mute jammer, but Julio's the one to get a kill.
Julio really will take out Sexy K because the angle is still open onto Jacuzzi, but NIP know that and they aren't willing to peek at all. Mute trick paying off. It's forcing Moringa to go underneath and to try and deal with that jammer vertically. It's been enough to push Pino out for the time being. But again, we're seeing time running fairly short. Moringa left searching for be it utility or players inside of that gym area, and he will actually find Julio. Managing to net himself a kill. Kamikaze will be able to respond, taking down Ness, because Ness looks to try and push on through and make something happen as well. C4 going to fire on out from Pino, and it will hit! I couldn't even see Palu on the X-ray vision that we've got there. The final couple of kills come in kind as well. NIP 7-1 on Clubhouse to open up stage 2.
Wow, wow, wow. They made that look like child's play. And that was so smart the way that they played it at the end too. You know, the fact that they did the mute trick, they immediately eradicated the Thatcher so that Team Liquid had to go underneath. They tried to try and get rid of the mute jammer a different way, but Pino moves out the way. So basically you're forcing the attackers to spend all their attention